All right, so let's make a formal introduction for our listener. Good afternoon, Sami. My name is Claudia. I'm calling you from Washington, D.C. From the studios in Fairfax City. We're very humble and grateful that Sami Abadi accepted our invitation to our show. Sami, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks a lot.
So tell me, so whatever is in with the whole world is upside down with the COVID and the pandemic and the difficulty to go outside. Some people want to take the vaccine. Some people don't believe the vaccine. You know, yourself as a musician, you can now tour that much and do shows and record and that kind of stuff. How the stuff is affecting your life, your sanity, your creativity, and everything, man.
Well, uh, these are obviously hard times. These are not easy times, and I have not much to say about uh, what what are we dealing with because I don't know what is this pandemic moment. I don't know about science. I do not know about medicine. The only thing that I know is that we are waiting for all this to come to an end.
Yeah,
And in the meantime, we are trying to learn as much as we can from these strange times we have to live. Um, I think that um, we are going to understand how this is affecting us in a few years. Not right now, because everything is happening right now, and we are not very conscious of what is this all about. So I maybe I think I don't know, the whole world is upside down, as you said, and things are really strange. I had the opportunity to live whole for a whole year with my wife and my son, 24 hours a day, and this is unusual. And as you know, my son is 5 years old. He was 4 years old last year, and somehow I think, well, but maybe this was some kind of miracle that I have been able to share with him as uh, as long a time.
sure, absolutely.
That's in the positive side of things, and there is a negative side of things, and I don't know. I am particularly fed up with the situation, but there is no one to blame. It's just something that is is not as we would have um, chose this. So I'm just waiting for it to end. Here in Argentina, I hope that after the winter, we are going to say goodbye to this bad time, and because spring is coming and all the vaccination is on. So well, let's hope we can leave this behind very soon.
And all the venues are still closed. So little by little, they're opening up the pubs and theaters and then big venue. Little by little, they start opening up so people can go and see a show, and go outside. And it's
Yes, little by little, it is beginning to open in in a new set in a new setting, maybe for less people with distance and all kind of things. But uh, just today, I am programming my next show that hopefully it will be in a month, in a theater here in Buenos Aires, Argentina.
yeah.
But you don't know because we are not still completely open.
Wow. So it's going to be hard because you guys, as a musician, right? Either you're teaching at an institute or private lesson, or the only way you get paid is performing, right? It used to be when
Yeah,
people were selling CDs and vinyl, that kind of stuff. No anymore, right? You make money when you play, but basically, right? So
yeah. In all honesty, art music does not give you much money. So it's a shame we cannot play gigs, absolutely, but not exactly because of money. It's more like a purpose in life, and a need, an inner need to play and to make art, but not specifically about money. That is my situation. There is an interaction between all the music business, if you want to call it that way, and one of the things that stand your music business might be your live performance, but but live performance does not play an important role in the economic life of musicians nowadays, and this is something that few musicians like to accept it publicly. Mm. It is something that is not said loudly in an interview, but we all know that is the reality. We are doing it because we need it, and we have followers and an audience, but this is not about money.
I understand. Yeah, I understand. Yes. Let's go back to the beginning. Were you born like in a musical family and people at the home, where the mom, the teacher, were a lot of records at home, or when did you start
No,
taking, then the follow up question, taking violin lesson or guitar, or when everything started for you?
it's really something of how can I say it? It's something that comes very particularly from myself. My family was not at the time into music or into art, or into anything about that, but I was aware from very early that music was important to me. I have some memories from me at 2 years old or 3 years old, which in which music played an important role. Something I have deep memories of being touched by music from the very beginning of my life, and I have found I have found the opportunities in a non-musical environment to find music. So I took very good advantage of the music lessons at school, at primary school. There was a choir. I used to sing in that choir, and I learned a lot from that experience. I paid a lot of attention of what was musically alive around me and took from all of that. And as a child, I got some music lessons. There is an institution here that is called an educational institute that is called Collegium Musicum. Collegium Musicum is a school that used to teach the first lessons to children in music, and I was part of that program, and then I got my first guitar at 11 years old and managed to play it. That was, but nothing very well established. I was grabbing from everywhere where I could grab. Then I took lessons I always had to pay my lessons for myself, because my parents wouldn't like me to play music or to become a musician. But that's why I say there is something very, very um, genuine, or unavoidable in a way, impossible to avoid. That was that I was willing and going to be a musician.
They,
And
yeah, so I'm sorry, personal, but they didn't want to pay for it because they thought that music was not important and you should go to school and become a doctor, engineer, or you didn't have the means to do it, or
no, the first thing, that's correct.
oh yeah,
They
I got
wouldn't
you.
like to pay for it. It's not that we were rich, but we could afford some lessons. But they choose not to do it as soon as they realized that music could be my way, and they would not support it.
Yeah.
That was
Oh,
something that well, it's not unusual, or was not unusual on those days, because I am now 55 years old, and 40 years ago, when I was a teenager, to be a musician was not an option that was in the menu of some traditional families, I could say, or typical families, middle class families. Nowadays, everybody is a musician.
it's acceptable nowadays.
It's acceptable, and we have lots of musicians. It's all kind of careers have opened happily,
Yeah,
but on those days there were not as many acceptable careers.
yeah. I mean, if you think about it, right? So, and I told you before, I like a wide range of stuff, right? From jazz, from rock, from electronic, for soundtrack, and a good example, 40 years ago or something, uh, I don't know, Soda Stereo was born, and then Soda Stereo became the best rock band in the Spanish world by far. I mean, we'll need to wait probably 100 years before somebody can even close, right? And Sweet Generis and Charlie Garcia and Flaco Spinetta and Pedro Aznar, and so very, very good music. But it was, I suppose, it was difficult to make a living. I mean, if you're going to become very, very good, then you can make a living. But if you are just like an average, it's very difficult to make a living. As opposed to, well, you want to make money, go to school, go become an engineer, or a doctor, and do kind of music on the side as a hobby. But
Well,
to convince your
in
parents
fact,
to go,
in
right?
fact, I think that the generation that came before me, my parents, they didn't have a clue about it.
Yeah,
They did not even say you have to be good, or you have to do this, or you have to do that. They did not have a clue. It was a generation that knew very few things, the few things that were in his small world,
yeah,
and that was all. As about making a living in music, the reality is very different. It's not about being good or not being good, because this is something that it's very difficult to measure. And there is things that are not good and that sell a lot, and there are things that do not sell and are excellent
gotcha.
for
Yeah,
me, or there are branches in the music industry where you can make a living, and it doesn't matter the quality of music, but in what part of the business you are. I mean, you can be a good mastering engineer and have a lot of work because you are demanded, and that has nothing to do with music, but with the technical aspect of music. So, and there are a lot of branches in which you could work into music. And ultimately, I feel you have to find your own niche in which you can be good and be necessary. But well, I don't know if I am into your question.
No, you did. You did. Yeah. So and then so when you finished the equivalent of high school here in the United States, and were you involved in bands with other people? Were you part of a big group on either playing guitar or doing keyboards or violin? When you make the decision, say, man, music is going to be my way of life, and I don't care what everybody else say or think or whatever. This is my thing, and I want to go for it.
As soon as I finished high school, I knew I was going to be a musician.
Yeah.
And I had a kind of profile. I knew what I wanted to do. I mean, I wanted to be into art music. I mean, I was studying violin, but not to be a musician at an orchestra. That was not the side of music which attracted me. My model was maybe Jean-Luc Ponty. I mean, if I imagined or envisioned myself with a violin, the setting was a band where I could compose and lead, or be a part of a band. I grew up with all the sound of the 70s. So for me, violin was an instrument that could be among synthesizers, electric guitars, drums, wind instruments, and all sorts of things. But I was not envisioning a violin that was in a chamber environment, not initially. So that was, I decided that was my way. And then I was studying to become that musician that I imagined that could do those kind of things.
Yeah, I got you. What kind of music you were listening? If you mentioned the 70s and the 80s, what kind of music were you listening to? You do have like a lot of vinyl and radio that you could access. That was before CDs. So.
Well, I have a very important vinyl collection that I have been collecting from I bought my first record at 12 years old, and so and my records are still with me, because I always say that records are my music education. My real music education are records. And then I have studied with a lot of teachers and schools and workshops and classes and whatever. But the real lessons are the things.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I lost myself in your question.
You were saying about the records. The vinyl is the real education.
You wanted to know which bands I like, maybe.
Yeah.
I liked a lot of bands, but maybe I should name those which had a violin at one point of another, or which inspired me to include a violin. No, for instance, we had King Crimson, and they had violin or viola.
Yeah.
And then we have UK with Eddie Jobson. He was a very huge influence to me, Eddie Jobson, and UK as a band. And then we had bands which had a flute, not a violin, but a flute. And I thought if a flute can be in that kind of progressive rock, then a violin can also be. For instance, Focus, Camel,
Sure.
and Sheprotal. Those were bands which had a flute, and Premiata Formeria Marconi.
Yeah.
That was another important for me because, well, they had violins and flute, and it was the same musician, by the way. I had on those days, great admiration, high regard for those musicians who could play more than one instrument. So Eddie Jobson, he was an excellent keyboard player as well as a violin player. Or Mauro Pagani from Premiata Formeria Marconi, he could play a lot of instruments, violin and flute, and he also played mandolin and bouzouki. Andy Latimer from Camel, he is a great guitar player, but he also played the flute. So that was something that attracted me a lot. So there was, you have to study.
Sure. Man, you mentioned very good name. I did have the opportunity with a friend to interview Premiata PFM, and they're very good. And I interview one guy from King Crimson, and King Crimson is going to be touring here in the United States, so I'm going to be seeing them a couple of times in October. So I'm hoping to get a confirmation email because I'm going to be interviewing Robert Fripp hopefully in September, October. So
wonderful.
I'm very lucky to do this stuff, to talk to people. And,
well, now I should not forget Mahavishnu Orchestra.
of course, yeah, Mahavishnu.
Because of the inclusion of violins.
Right.
Jean-Luc Ponty, he was a member of Mahavishnu, and he also played with Frank Zappa, which I love, absolutely. So there is something about, well, I was playing guitar from very early years, but I felt that the guitar had been explored broadly. So I felt that I wanted a new instrument, something that is not so well represented, so highly represented as was the electric guitar. Nowadays, I'm not sure, I don't know, but that was a choice in those days. So I began to study violin with the idea of making it electric as soon as possible.
Right. And then you, in your composition, I mean, if you need to pick one, you are more comfortable, or you prefer to do either keyboard, violin, guitar, or you like to have the freedom to do a little bit of everything, depending of the year, right? So this year you want to do more jazzy, and then or more rock, and you always do in your music, right? There's a combination of different things, different influences, not just,
Yes, that's correct. I don't know if I prefer an instrument. I would say that I don't, but I am known as a violin player, and my image is associated with the violin.
Yeah.
But I think myself mostly as a composer.
I got you, right.
And not as much as an instrumentalist. Instruments are important because it's the way you find to express your ideas. So, but I have, like we could say, I have harmonic ideas and formal ideas, or compositional ideas that sometimes are better expressed on a keyboard. And I have melodic ideas of expression, of articulation, of sound, of timbre that are better expressed in a violin. And what I'm trying to do is to find an integration, because I'm also interested in rhythm a lot. I mean, interested in rhythm, it means that I want to play it myself. So I work with mix of electronic percussion instruments, and it's not hard to integrate all of that on a recording environment, but it's harder to do on a live set. And my live set is mostly a solo set.
Gotcha.
So I am always struggling to find a way of having my violin here, a keyboard here, some electronic percussion here, or a sequencer there, and being able to work it all together. And that's why, as I told you earlier, I am using bass pedals. Not to play bass exactly, but to play harmony with my feet.
Gotcha. Wow.
So playing harmony with my feet and the violin with my hands, it comes close to the idea of playing it all.
I understand.
And why do I do that? It's not
Yeah.
because I am like an antisocial. I'm not at all. I am an absolutely social guy, but there is something that I strive for, that I look for, that is to be able to make the music that I am imagining on the spot. Something that might be called improvisation, but the word improvisation, and mostly in English, is used mostly for other things, that is for soloing. And I do not think about improvisation in terms of soloing. Soloing is not as much interesting to me as is to compose a whole piece. So that is improvisation for me, to compose a whole piece with all the parts on the spot, and that's why I need to play it all. When I do not get to play it all, I find the proper partners. So that's why I have a trio with Ulises Lavaroni and Ernesto Romeo. We have a trio, and I have a group of musicians who play in a group that we call the Sami Abadi Orchestra, and it's a group of the musicians rotate, but they all know a kind of language we are developing, a language of improvisation, of understanding of each other. But it's not improvisation about soloing. It's improvisation about building. That it's a different thing.
I understand. No, I completely understand. Let's go over. I was listening to. Let's go over your music. I had the opportunity to listen to a lot of different things. For some stuff you sent me, some stuff from Spotify, web and so on. And I want to bring the attention a couple of tracks from. And free to elaborate on how that composition come together. One is called Pacific, from the album Escuela de Vuelo para Amphibios. That's a beautiful piece, man.
Thank you. Okay, well, this album, you are happy to speak Spanish because it's not easy to pronounce for not Spanish speakers. Amphibian School of Flight, that would be the translation. This album is all made with toy instruments. There are some bits of violin here and there, but mostly it's all toy instruments, very cheap instruments that you can find here on what we was formerly the $1 shops. Do you remember? Maybe
Yeah,
you have seen that in the States.
we do.
We
Yeah, we
used
do.
to have that here. We don't have it anymore. So it's this kind of instruments, mostly from China, and very cheap things, which I gathered and began to make to create the imaginary music of an imaginary island. That is the concept of that album, that maybe you will find it very different from other things that I did. Not as, indeed, everything is connected, but on the surface it sounds very different. And the idea was make music of a lost island, or an imaginary island, maybe in the Pacific. That's why the song is called Pacific.
Yeah.
And I'm playing with the idea of the music of Indonesia, or something like that, but without making a real inquiry of that music, but just playing with my imagination. It's not gamelan music at all, but it has a wink with that kind of music. Or
Yeah,
it's
that's
not music from gagaku, that is the music of traditional music from Japan. I have studied traditional music from different parts of the world, and I am playing with that without being ethnomusicology. It's just a game.
I understand. The other great track is called Itaki from the album Arco Voltaico, and I picked like different track from different albums, so we can. That's another great album actually, the Arco Voltaico, Itaki, and feel free to elaborate the same question for that one. It's a beautiful piece.
Great. Well, arco voltaico would translate. You know better than me because you are an engineer. I think that is electric bowery, isn't
Yeah.
it? Okay, so it's a pan of words, because the electric violin has a bow,
Right.
and it's electric. So that's why electric bowery, arco voltaico, and the whole album is centered on just a violin, a looper, and a reverb processor. It's a very small setting, a set very portable. You could put it in a